Good afternoon. Oh, I've got the lapel and I'm steadily grabbing for this. I am so honored to be here today. Never would I imagine that I would be speaking here at Liberty University, but here I am. I went on the website because I needed to have some kind of insight to who Liberty University is. And in that search, these are some words that are on your website. We believe how you think is just as vital as what you think. A fundamental part of the college experience is being exposed to a variety of viewpoints so that students can better understand why they hold their own beliefs and be better prepared to defend them. We also believe that how you disagree is as vital as why you disagree. Learning how to disagree without being disrespectful is a vital tool for any world changer who is truly more interested in winning people than winning an argument. After reading those words, I felt like I could stand up here, speak my truth without hesitation. Again, I'm so glad to be here. The topic, resilience in the African American church. Well, my story tells about resilience in the African American church. I'm a proud daughter of the American South, a true Geechee girl, born and raised in the low country of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm a product of the civil rights era, and my Southern Black Christian heritage has helped shape me into the woman of faith I am today. But like many African Americans from the South, I am no stranger to the hate and intolerance that has unfortunately defined a large part of our history. On June 17, 2015, a 21-year-old white young man with hate in his heart and a gun in his fanny pack decided that that would be the day that he would go into Emanuel AME Church and shoot and kill as many people as he could. You see, this was not a crime of passion. This was premeditated because he scouted out the church by making several road trips back and forth to Charleston to plot out his way of getting into the church and leaving the church. He knew exactly what he was doing that Wednesday night when he was in that church. The church was full of people earlier in the evening. The church was having their quarterly, monthly meeting where most of the regional churches got together and planned out the calendar year. The Bible study went over, and there was a discussion about whether they would cancel the Bible study. They did not cancel the Bible study, and the faithful few stayed. They stayed and they welcomed this young man into the church. They sat him near Reverend Pinckney because that's where he asked to be seated. After about an hour of studying the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, they were dismissed. They got in a circle, they held hands, and with their heads bowed, Dylan Roof slaughtered them while they tried to run and hide under the tables. they were met with their deaths where they ran. 5 people survived this tragedy. 5 people have to live every day with the images and the words they heard in that church that night. This young man was led to believe that black men were raping white women, and he was the one that was going to set this straight for the white world. I will continue to call their names because my mission in life has become helping other people to understand that hate will not win. Their names are my mother, Mrs. Ethel Lance, my 2 cousins, Mrs. Susie Jackson and Tywanzer Sanders, my childhood friend, Myra Thompson, the pastor of the church, Reverend Clemente Pinckney, Reverend Daniel Simmons, Reverend Sharonda Coleman, Mrs. Cynthia Hurd, and Reverend DePayne Middleton Doctor. Did you realize that most of the people that were killed were ordained ministers in the church? We wonder why. That's a significance that I won't get into what I think that meant, but that's something for you to think about. Out of the 9 people, most of them were clergy. Whenever you hear their names or you read their names, I hope that something stirs in your heart to help invoke change. But because of all of this, I stand here today as an accidental activist. An accidental activist is someone who finds themselves in a life-altering experience and spring into action for specific causes or issues. Not every activist starts out with the goal of changing the world, but by bringing some change where they are in the communities where they live. Some of us have our lives shaped by chance, quirks of timing, and strange coincidences because of blatant acts of violence. Our unwillingness or simple inability to fully ignore the social injustices in this world propels us into action. This willingness to stand up is what the church has brought forth in me. Such was the case with the man, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, a young man at that time, inexperienced in matters of public leadership, his theological diploma still wet with ink, and yet he was called upon to give direction to a march for freedom, the likes of which human history had never known. He advocated nonviolence and equal opportunities for blacks. Yet his life was ended by gun violence, and the lives of all who marched with him were faced with violence every time. Let me tell you how Dr. Martin Luther King affected my personal life. When I was around 9 years old, which was about 1967, my mother was working her part-time job at the county hall in Charleston. This particular night, a very special person was there to speak. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I got to the place. My mother settled me in the back of the hall. I couldn't see the stage. But all I could see was all the people in that place on their feet, clapping and stomping and saying amen. In my young mind, I thought Reverend King's voice would be what God would sound like to me. After hearing Dr. King speak, a seed was planted in me. I knew that one day I would stand up in front of people and talk about the things that mattered to me. Here I am. For such a time, this little old Geechee girl was picked. For this time. My journey through such darkness and pain opened me up to issues I thought I had a definite understanding about. The issues of forgiveness, the death penalty, racism and gun violence invaded my brain, and I had to take a closer look at what I truly believed. Walk with me a little bit as I deal with each of these issues in the way I needed to. But first, I want to tell you about Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas, who's the Dean of the Episcopal Divinity School at Union Theological Seminary in New York, which I had the great honor and pleasure to meet. But I want to read to you what she said about forgiveness after the Charleston massacre. Forgiveness, the Bible tells us, forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Dr. Brown wrote, forgiveness. While the meaning of forgiveness in Black church faith is complex, such forgiveness is not about the exoneration of the killer for the deadly injustice he perpetrated. Rather, it is about the loving justice of God and the liberation of the families from the Dylan Roof's sinful act. Forgiveness recognizes that the love of God is more powerful than any white racist hatred. Forgiveness in the first instance recognizes that no human justice can adequately respond to the grave injustice of a racist. Forgiveness then is a sign of the family's faith that God's justice will ultimately prevail, and thus it frees them from the anguish of knowing that no human justice will make up for the loss of their family members. While I read that, I thought she must know me. She was in the inside of my brains. While President Obama gave the eulogy for Reverend Pinckney, this is what President Obama had to say. President Obama declared in his eulogy that the Black church is the beating heart of the Black community, and it is. But as significant as the Black church has been to Black people, it has also played an important role in the life of the nation. Through persons such as Reverend Pinckney, the Black church has consistently led the way in advocating for racial justice and equality in America. President Obama said the nation has to determine, he asserted, whether it's going to respond to the grace of God in the midst of another terrible tragedy of racism, or remain captive to the nation's original sin. Some heavy words. We as a community, will continue to have to deal with these issues no matter where we are. We can't hide. We can't hide in our churches. We can't hide in our schools. We can't hide in the movie theaters because we already know that there is no place that is sacred. There is no good guy or bad guy with a gun. While I was trying to get my brains in gear to leave Dallas, Texas, to go to Charleston, before I had a chance to get out of Dallas, 48 hours after the killings in the church, the families was at Dylan Roof's court hearing, his arraignment hearing. I was in my bedroom and the TV was on and I heard my sister's voice. And when I came to the living room to see what I was hearing, my sister Nadine Collier was the first person to talk about forgiveness. I sat there looking crazy at the TV, knowing that I was not going to be able to call my sister to ask, what is this? Because she was on TV talking about forgiveness. Charlestonians displayed such grace and such dignity after the murders. Charleston was pegged that place where such amazing grace had occurred. But I was not ready to deal with that. I needed and I wanted people to know that that wasn't how everybody felt. There I was, a woman of the cloth, talking about there is no instant forgiveness from me. I wanted and I needed time to process my thoughts and be authentic about what I felt. But the media latched on to the sisters and tried to make it seem that we were feuding because she believed one thing and I believed the other thing. But that was not the truth because we were already fractured already from other family dynamics. And when our mother got killed, we couldn't take the strain. There I was, grieving the death of my mother and my cousins without the support of my sister, without the support of the little girl that I took care of because I was the oldest. But even in the midst of all of that, I was not going to jump on the forgiveness bandwagon. I did not care what people thought about the ordained minister not forgiving. I had to be in the place that I needed to be. I had to wrap my brains around what had happened and to fight and holler at God to help me understand. But you see, the one thing I know about God is that God will allow you to do whatever it is you need to do, to deal with whatever it is you need to deal with, because God will not abandon you. I fought with God. I prayed with God. I fought some more. But in the midst of all of that, I knew that I was not alone and that I didn't have anything to feel ashamed about because God was with me, because He told me that He would never leave me or forsake me. But yet, in the midst of all of that, on October 1st, 2017, thank you. On 2017, I was preaching in Martinsville, Virginia, at a World Communion Sunday. It was an interfaith program. Thank you. And I was preaching, and the words forgiveness came out of my mouth. That was not a part of the sermon. With tears rolling down my face, the words, I forgive you, Dylan Roof, came out of my mouth. I heard myself say from the depths of my soul those words of realization. It didn't come as a big epiphany, but it had settled in my soul. God was telling me that I was ready, that I was strong, that I had put in the work, and it was time to let all of that go. That I didn't have to be angry anymore. That I didn't have to carry all of that pain. That I could begin the work that He had called me to do without any residuals, without any doubts. You see, God allows all of us the time we need to come to a place of peace. I urge anybody in this room who has to deal with forgiving someone that you take your time, whatever your faith belief is, however you live that out, that you walk in that and you deal with it however you need to deal, and watch how much deeper your relationship with God will be. The death penalty, another issue. You know, you believe what you believe. I just knew when it came to the death penalty that if someone had killed children or whatever horrific thing, that of course they deserved the death penalty. But when I had to deal with the death penalty in my own life, this was not somebody else. This was not reading an article on Facebook. This was about what did I believe in the depths of my soul. You see, we had already been through several delays in the trial. And we were all anxious because we didn't know what we were going to face in that courtroom. Almost 10 to 15 days. We sat in that courtroom listening to every piece of evidence, looking at all the autopsy photos of their broken bodies and the crime scene. And yet in my mind, I was confused about what I wanted. I wanted him dead. But yet that side of me that God has taken over said, no. In the sanctity of life, you will not want him dead. Even him. Even the man that killed your family, you will not. In the Bible, it says, thou will not kill. And she wanted him dead from the beginning. But we were able to know that that's how you feel, and she knew how I felt, and we respected each other for that. We have to really start to think about these things that might never seem to cross your path. But as people, we really need to understand what it is we believe and be able to articulate that to anybody and not feel any kind of way about what it is that you believe. He was. On June 10th, 2016, he was given the death penalty. We sat in that courtroom after hearing that he would get the death penalty, and the family members, all of us, we just kind of sat there and looked at each other because we couldn't believe that this part of that journey would be over. That we would not have to worry about sitting in a courtroom. That somehow we could pull ourselves together and not worry about Dylan Roof anymore. At least in that respect. Because we knew where he was going. He was never going to see the light of day. And one day, I guess the federal authorities will put him to death. But it won't make me feel better. Does it really make you feel better? I don't think it does. But that's what we dealt with. We're only humans, but I thank God in that courtroom that day that his will was done. And I didn't have to worry about making a decision about what that would be. Racism and gun violence. I go back to Dr. King a lot because, of course, he's my hero, but I tell you, his writings were so profound, I can't help but using him as a part of my presentation. But Dr. King said, Dr. King, who was a profound teacher and scholar, provided hope through his use of biblical scriptures and a freedom, which was the one thing the black community depended on, was the church. Reverend King said religion in general and Christianity in particular becomes an answer to the mysteries of the cosmos and a way to cope. Only a belief in an unseen power and faith in a divine advocate could sustain my people who face such daunting circumstances. And one of the most significant factors that contributed to black success and survival has been our faith in God, belief in God, regular prayer, worship attendance, and belief in life after death are some of the core beliefs of the large majority of the African Americans. Although the expressions of faith and religious practices might differ, religious faith itself is a constant in the black church. The black church. Without the black church, where would we be? The black church was not only there for black people. The black church was there to show America of what it is to be a faithful Christian. To know that regardless of what it is that we will go through in this human life, God will see you through. People are living in fear and speaking out of their pain and confusion. People are being rounded up and deported. Families are being torn apart. African Americans and other people of color are wondering who will protect our rights under the Constitution. Who will ensure that all people have the same privileges and rights as the next person? No matter your political affiliation or your religious affiliation, people are feeling the fear or anger for what's happening in our country today. Racism has been with us from the very beginning of this country, but it has reared its ugly head even more today. I believe it's time to put our money and time in making this country good for everybody. As a person of faith, a messenger of God's words, I believe we as the church have a duty to begin the conversations about race over and over and over till there is an understanding of what we don't understand. I believe churches can no longer sit on the sidelines while our brothers and sisters are in need. Dr. King understood the church had to step up. If our sisters and brothers are hurting, no matter where they are in the world, we hurt also. The church universal must not stay quiet. Gun violence goes hand in hand with the crisis of racism. Soon after being back in Dallas, after being in Charleston, the funerals and all of these things, I received a big packet of mail from Emanuel Church. And one particular envelope caught my eye. I opened it up and it was the most heart-wrenching letter from Lucy McBath. You see, Lucy's son, Jordan Davis, was killed on November 23, 2012 in Jacksonville, Florida at a gas station where Michael Dunn, a 47-year-old white man, killed Jordan after shooting in the car after an argument over the loud music that was coming out the teenagers' cars. Lucy began her advocacy work with Everytown for gun safety and Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, which happens to be the largest grassroots advocacy movement to help prevent gun violence. I called her and we talked and cried and talked and cried some more. And it was from that connection that I became involved with the most important movement. A group of more than 3 million mayors, moms, cops, teachers, gun owners, survivors, any person you can think about is a part of this group that we have come together to make our own communities safer. We are fighting for changes that we know that will save lives. I know that this gun violence issue is a very hot issue, and there are many different opinions. I just need you to know, nobody that I've ever worked with or come across wants to infringe on anybody's Second Amendment rights. We just need you to understand that gun violence is a national crisis, that people of color are killed more than any other people, and that there has to be a way that we can save lives. And this is what we're about, saving lives. It's a heart issue, y'all. It's a heart issue because if gun violence does not make your heart hurt, cause pain in your soul, I don't know what will. More than 100 people die every day in this country because of gun violence, whether it's through homicides, suicides, or unintentional shooting. And don't you know that 8 kids die every day from some sort of gun violence, whether it was because an adult was not accountable and left their guns out or whatever it is. 8 kids across this country are killed because of a gun. I pray that with every fiber of my being, that not one of you will ever feel such pain and grief because one of your loved ones was killed by a gun. In conclusion, Dr. King said, that's my boy, Dr. King said, nothing will be done until people of goodwill put their bodies and souls into motion. And it will be the kind of soul force brought into being as a result of this confrontation that I believe will make a difference. The resiliency of the Black church will forever be. The Black church is what resilience is about. You can burn us down, you can kill us in the church, but you won't take away the Black church. The Black church is what nurtured me and taught me and empowered me to go forth. This journey has taken me to places I'd never dreamed of, talking and meeting people I never in my life thought that I would be standing up with. But there comes a time in all our lives where we will face some of the most challenging experiences. How we decide to accept and press forward defines who we are. As a people, we may not agree on everything, but how we move forward to protect and defend all is a matter of what you believe. I didn't ask for this journey. I'd rather not be standing up here because that means my mother would be alive and I can get to talk to her, but that is not to be. But I hope that you have heard something this afternoon that you didn't know before, something that will stir your heart to do something always for the betterment of yourself and then to bring someone else along who may not look like you or talk like you or live in the same neighborhood as you. We share this great country, y'all, we do. And as people of faith, we are called to be in community with each other. Let us continue to work together to be the best we can be for each other. Thank you, and may God bless each and every one of you. Amen.